"Look at her," the agent whispered loudly, pointing a manicured finger at the woman in the faded hoodie. "She can barely speak English. I bet she doesn't even know what first class means." The passengers in line snickered, unaware that the woman they were laughing at wasn't just a passenger. She was Dr. Eris Thorne, the matriarch of the global logistics empire Vanguard Horizon. She wasn't just buying a ticket. She was deciding whether to sign a $950 million merger with their airline. That agent didn't just mock an accent. She mocked the woman who owned the planes. And by the time the sun rose, that agent would wish she had never learned to speak at all. Here is the story of how one act of prejudice grounded an entire airline. The fluorescent lights of Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 3 hummed with the chaotic energy of a Tuesday evening. Outside, snow was beginning to drift against the reinforced glass, promising delays and fraying tempers. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee, floor wax, and expensive perfume. Dr. Eris Thorne adjusted the strap of her leather satchel. It was an old bag, battered and scarred from trips to cobalt mines in the DRC and tech summits in Zurich, but to the untrained eye, it looked like something fished out of a discount bin. Eris herself looked nothing like the cover of Forbes, where she had been featured just 3 weeks prior. She wore a charcoal hoodie, loose joggers, and running shoes that had seen better days. She had just flown in from a 30-hour consultation in Lagos and was connecting through Chicago to get home to London. She was exhausted, her bones aching with a deep, marrow-level fatigue. She approached the Regal Airways check-in counter. This wasn't just any flight. This was the inaugural route for the new partnership between Regal Airways and her own company, Vanguard Horizon. The deal was valued at $950 million, a contract that would save Regal from bankruptcy and give Vanguard a dedicated fleet for their luxury travel division. Eris wasn't traveling on her diplomatic passport today. She wanted to see how Regal treated its customers when the CEOs weren't watching. She wanted to see the soul of the company she was about to buy. The line for Elite Prestige check-in was short. A red carpet, slightly frayed at the edges, guided passengers to a podium made of faux marble. Behind it stood Jessica Vance. Jessica was the kind of gate agent who wore her uniform like armor. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tight it pulled at the corners of her eyes, and her badge, Senior Customer Service Lead, caught the light aggressively. She was currently typing furiously on her keyboard, ignoring the 3 people standing in front of her. Eris stepped up to the counter when it was her turn. "Good evening," Eris said, her voice carrying the rich, distinct cadence of her Nigerian heritage, layered with the clipped precision of her Oxford education. It was a beautiful accent, authoritative yet warm. "I am checking in for Flight 492 to Heathrow." Jessica didn't look up. She kept typing. "Kiosk is over there for economy." "I am not flying economy," Eris said, her voice remaining calm. "I have a reservation in first." Jessica finally stopped typing. She looked up, her eyes scanning Eris from the messy bun on her head to the scuffed sneakers. A smirk curled the corner of her lips, a micro-expression of absolute disdain. "Name?" Jessica asked, popping her gum. "Dr. Eris Thorne." Jessica typed the name in, not with efficiency, but with a slow, dramatic lethargy. She stared at the screen, then back at Eris. "I don't see it," Jessica lied. The screen clearly showed Thorne, Eris. Status: invitation only. Yolastka board member priority. It was a status code so rare most agents never saw it. But Jessica saw a black woman in a hoodie, speaking with an African accent, and her bias overwrote the data in front of her. "Please check again," Eris said, leaning slightly on the counter. "I checked in online. The confirmation code is—" "I heard you the first time," Jessica interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. but frankly, I'm having trouble understanding you. Your accent is very thick. Are you sure you're at the right airline? Spirit Airlines is in Terminal 5. The couple behind Aris, a well-dressed man in a suit, and his partner, chuckled softly. Oris felt the heat rise in her neck, not from shame, but from a simmering anger she hadn't felt in years. My accent, Aris said, lowering her voice to a dangerous whisper, is not the issue, Miss Vance. The issue is my ticket. Please print my boarding pass. Don't tell me how to do my job, Jessica snapped, her voice rising so other passengers could hear. And don't get aggressive with me. I know how you people get when you don't get your way. The terminal went quiet. The phrase, "you people," hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Aris stood completely still. In the boardroom, Aris was known as the silencer. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She simply dismantled her opponents with logic so cold it burned. But here, stripped of her suits and her entourage, she was vulnerable to the pettiest form of power, a gate agent with a god complex. "Excuse me?" Aris asked, giving Jessica one final chance to retreat from the precipice. "You heard me," Jessica said, leaning forward, her eyes gleaming with malice. "This is the priority lane. It's for business professionals and wealthy travelers, not for whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at Aris's outfit. "If you manage to scam a ticket with a stolen credit card, security will catch it. So why don't you step aside and let the actual paying customers through?" "I bought this ticket," Aris said, her Oxford diction cutting through the noise. "And I would suggest you check the manifest for the Aurora Travel Group." Jessica laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Aurora? Sounds like a stripper name. Look, lady, I don't have time to decode your broken English. You're holding up the line. Step aside or I'm calling security." "Call them," Aris challenged. Jessica's face flushed red. She grabbed her radio. "Dispatch, I have a disruptive passenger at counter 4, refusing to leave the priority area. Possible fraud. Need immediate assistance." She slammed the radio down and looked at Aris with a triumphant sneer. "There. Now you're going to jail. Happy?" The man behind Aris, the one in the suit, tapped Aris on the shoulder. "Miss, please," he said, sounding annoyed. "We have a flight to catch. Just go to economy where you belong." Aris turned to look at him. "Mr. Henderson," she said, reading the tag on his briefcase. "You are an architect, yes? Working on the new Skyline project in Dubai?" The man blinked, stunned. "How did you know that?" "Because my firm is financing the steel transport for your building," Aris said simply. "And if you speak to me again with that tone, the steel will remain in the port of Mumbai for another 6 months." The man turned pale and took a step back. Aris turned back to Jessica. 2 police officers were approaching on segways looking bored. "What seems to be the problem?" the first officer, Officer Miller, asked. "She's harassing me," Jessica said immediately, putting on a fake, trembling voice. "She's shouting, refusing to show ID, and I think her ticket is fraudulent. I don't feel safe." Officer Miller looked at Aris. He saw a tired woman in a hoodie. He didn't see a threat, but he knew the drill. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your ID and boarding pass." Aris reached into her bag. Jessica flinched dramatically. "She's reaching for something." "It is a passport," Aris said dryly. She handed the dark blue booklet to the officer. Officer Miller opened it. He paused. He looked at the cover. It wasn't a standard passport. It was a diplomatic passport issued to economic envoys of the Commonwealth. He flipped to the visa page and saw the stamps. G7 Summit. Davos. UN Assembly. "Ma'am." Officer Miller's demeanor changed instantly. "There seems to be a misunderstanding." There is no misunderstanding, Jessica interjected. She's a fraud. Look at her clothes. Check the computer, officer, Aris said. And look specifically for the override code. Vanguard Alpha Zero. Jessica rolled her eyes. She's making up words now. Officer Miller stepped around the counter, nudging Jessica aside. Hey, you can't be back here, Jessica protested. Quiet, Miller said. He typed in the code Aris provided. The screen flashed red, then turned a deep, solid gold. A message popped up in bold letters. Do not charge. Owner status. Alert station manager immediately. Officer Miller swallowed hard. He looked at Jessica. Did you read her file? I didn't have to, Jessica scoffed. I know her type. Her type, Miller whispered. Lady, this woman owns the plane. Jessica stared at the screen. The words, owner status, blinked mockingly. It's a glitch, Jessica stammered, her face losing its color. The system is old. Hackers do this all the time. It is not a glitch, Aris said. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a phone. It wasn't a smartphone. It was a satellite phone, thick and industrial. What are you doing? Jessica demanded, trying to regain control of the situation. You can't use that here. Aris ignored her. She pressed a single speed dial button. Put it on speaker, Aris commanded the officer. I want her to hear this. Officer Miller nodded, terrified to disobey. The phone rang once, then a voice answered. A deep, booming voice that everyone in the aviation industry knew. It was Richard Sterling, the CEO of Regal Airways. Aris, Richard's voice crackled through the quiet terminal. Profound apologies for the delay in the merger paperwork. I assume you've arrived in Chicago? I sent a limo to the tarmac. I am in the terminal, Richard, Aris said, her eyes locked on Jessica. The terminal? Richard sounded confused. Why? You should be in the private suite. Did my team not meet you? Your team, Aris said, her voice icy, is currently debating whether my thick accent allows me to fly first class. Your lead agent, a Miss Jessica Vance, has accused me of fraud, called the police, and informed me that I belong in economy because, and I quote, she knows my type. There was a silence on the other end of the line, so profound it felt like the air pressure in the terminal dropped. She said what? Richard whispered. Jessica was shaking now. She recognized the voice. She had watched Richard Sterling's town hall video just yesterday. I am currently standing at counter 4, Aris continued, and I am looking at my watch. It is 8:15 p.m. The merger signing is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow in London. But Richard, I do not think I want to merge with a company that hires bigots to represent its face. Aris, please, Richard sounded frantic. Don't say that. We've been working on this for 2 years. That deal is the only thing keeping our stock afloat. Then you have a problem, Aris said, because I am currently being threatened with arrest for trying to board my own aircraft. Put her on, Richard roared. Put the agent on the phone, now. Aris held the phone out to Jessica. Jessica's hands trembled so badly she dropped her pen. She didn't want to take the phone. She looked around for help, but the line of passengers had backed away, sensing the radioactive fallout. Even the arrogant architect, Mr. Henderson, was pretending to study a vending machine. Take it, Officer Miller said, crossing his arms. Jessica took the heavy satellite phone. Hello? Who is this? Richard screamed. The volume was so loud Aris didn't even need speakerphone anymore. Jessica Vance, senior lead. You are done, Richard interrupted. You are finished. Do you have any idea who you are talking to? Dr. Thorne isn't just a passenger. She controls the Aurora Travel Group. She is bringing 3,000 corporate accounts to our airline, or she was, until you opened your mouth. She didn't look like a VIP, Jessica whimpered, tears streaming down her face. She was wearing a hoodie. She has an accent. An accent? Richard laughed, a harsh, hysterical sound. That accent is the sound of money, you idiot. That woman speaks 7 languages. She has a PhD in international economics, and you mocked her. I was just following protocol. Your protocol is to be a racist? Richard shouted. Listen to me closely. You are to upgrade her immediately. You will apologize. And then you will pack your things and leave my airport. You are fired, effective immediately. But give the phone back to Dr. Thorne. Jessica handed the phone back to Aris like it was made of burning coal. She looked small, defeated, but there was still a glint of resentment in her eyes. She felt cornered, and people like Jessica, when cornered, don't apologize. They lash out. Aris took the phone. I am here, Richard. Aris, I am so sorry. I'm calling the station manager. He'll be there in 2 minutes. Please, let's not let one bad apple spoil the merger. It is not one bad apple, Richard, Aris said, looking around at the other agents who had stood by and watched, saying nothing. It is the whole barrel, and the night is young. I have not even boarded yet. What do you mean? My team is arriving shortly, Oris said. The Aurora Group, 30 of my top executives. They are all black, Asian, and Hispanic. They all have accents. Let us see how your staff handles them. If one more person is disrespected, the deal is dead, permanently. I'll handle it, Richard promised. I'm flying out there right now. Aris hung up. She looked at Jessica. You heard him, Aris said. Print my ticket. Jessica wiped her face. Her sadness had hardened into a cold, spiteful fury. She had been fired. She had nothing left to lose, and in her twisted mind, this was all Oris's fault. Systems locked, Jessica lied, crossing her arms. I can't print anything if I'm fired. You'll have to wait. She was stalling. She wanted to humiliate Aris one last time. She wanted Aris to stand there and wait while the commoners boarded. But Jessica didn't know that the Aurora travel group had just walked through the revolving doors, and they didn't look like tourists. They looked like an army. The revolving doors of Terminal 3 didn't just spin. They seemed to exhale a sudden, shifting pressure into the room. The air, previously stagnant with the smell of floor wax and anxiety, suddenly carried the scent of ozone, expensive leather, and amber oil. Jessica Vance was still standing behind the counter, her arms crossed over her chest in a posture of defiance. She had been fired. She knew that. But she was banking on the inertia of bureaucracy. Security hadn't come to escort her out yet. The station manager was still minutes away. In her mind, she had a window of time to make Dr. Aris Thorne suffer. If she couldn't keep her job, she would ensure Aris missed her flight. It was a petty, scorching need for vengeance that blinded her to the wall of people approaching. You're bluffing, Jessica sneered, leaning over the laminate counter. You don't have a team. You're just a woman in a tracksuit trying to intimidate me with a fake phone call. I bet that wasn't even Richard Sterling. Probably some boyfriend of yours using a voice changer. Oris didn't answer. She simply turned her back to the counter and faced the entrance. The group that entered was not a tour bus crowd. They didn't have matching t-shirts or confused expressions. There were 30 of them, moving in a loose but synchronized formation that spoke of years of working in high-stakes environments. At the front walked Sarah Jenkins, Aris's chief financial officer. Sarah was a tall, striking woman with skin the color of deep mahogany, wearing a cream-colored cashmere coat that probably cost more than Jessica's car. Beside her was Kenji Sato, the head of global logistics, adjusting a platinum watch on his wrist. Behind them were lawyers, engineers, and strategists, a kaleidoscope of ethnicities, a tapestry of accents. They were the Aurora Travel Group, the executive arm of Vanguard Horizon, and unlike Aris, they were dressed for war. The sharp lines of bespoke Savile Row suits and Italian heels clicked against the linoleum floor with a rhythmic, military precision. The terminal fell silent. Passengers who had been grumbling about delays stopped to stare. It wasn't just the clothes, it was the aura. These people moved with the casual confidence of those who owned the spaces they occupied. Sarah Jenkins spotted Oris. Her eyes widened slightly at Aris's hoodie, the camouflage Aris preferred for travel, but she didn't bat an eye. She walked straight up to her boss, ignoring the gaping onlookers. "Dr. Thorne," Sarah said, her voice crisp and American. "The convoy was delayed by the snow. We have the hard drives for the merger secure." She gestured to the two men behind her, carrying reinforced metallic briefcases. "Thank you, Sarah," Aris said softly. "But we have a complication." Sarah turned her gaze to the check-in counter. She saw Jessica, who looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. "A complication?" Sarah asked, her eyebrow arching. "The agent," Aris said, gesturing to Jessica, "believes we are unable to afford the cabin. She has also expressed concerns regarding our linguistic capabilities." Sarah's expression went flat. She turned fully toward Jessica. Sarah was known in the industry as the hammer to Aris's silencer. Where Oris dismantled you with logic, Sarah crushed you with policy. "Is that so?" Sarah walked up to the counter, placing her designer handbag down with a heavy thud. "My name is Sarah Jenkins, CFO of Vanguard Horizon. I believe you have 30 first-class seats reserved under the code Aurora Prime. We are ready to check in." Jessica swallowed hard. The reality of the situation was crashing down on her. The hoodie woman really was the boss. But Jessica was too deep in her own ego to back down. To apologize now would be to admit total defeat, and her pride was a rigid, brittle thing. "I can't check you in," Jessica stammered, her voice losing its edge but keeping its stubbornness. "Why not?" Sarah asked. "Systems down," Jessica lied again, glancing at the computer screen which was perfectly functional. Suddenly, a side door burst open. A man in a slightly ill-fitting suit rushed out, straightening a tie that was too wide for current fashion. It was Braden Cole, the night duty manager. Braden was Jessica's ally. They smoked together on breaks. They complained about foreigners in the break room together. He saw Jessica's tear-stained face, saw the large group of formidable-looking people, and saw Officer Miller standing uselessly to the side. His instinct was to protect his own. "What is going on here?" Braden demanded, puffing out his chest. He marched behind the counter and placed a hand on Jessica's shoulder. "Jessica, are you okay?" "They're harassing me, Braden," Jessica sobbed, seizing the opportunity. "This mob, they just walked in and started demanding upgrades. That woman in the hoodie threw a phone at me, and now they're swarming the desk." Braden turned to Aris, his face reddening. He didn't know about the call to the CEO yet. He just saw a chaotic lobby and his friend crying. "Step back," Braden shouted, pointing at Aris and Sarah. "All of you, back behind the yellow line. Now." "Excuse me?" Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave. "We are passengers." "I don't care who you are," Braden spat. "You're disrupting operations. I'm the duty manager, and I have the right to refuse service to anyone who abuses my staff." "Abuses?" Aris spoke up, stepping forward. "Mr. Cole, is it? Your staff member refused to print my ticket because of my accent. She called the police on me. I have already spoken to Richard Sterling." Braden laughed. It was a nervous, incredulous laugh. "Richard Sterling?" "Right. And I'm the King of England. Listen, lady. People try I know the CEO card every day. It doesn't work on me. "It is not a card," Aris said calmly. "It is a fact." "If you don't back off," Braden threatened, "I'm cancelling your entire group's reservation. We have a wait list a mile long for this flight. I can sell these seats in 10 minutes. Aris looked at Braden. She looked at Jessica, who was smirking behind her tears, feeling safe now that Big Braden was here to handle the bullies. "Do it," Aris said. The terminal went quiet again. Sarah Jenkins looked at Aris, shocked. "Aris, the merger signing is in 12 hours. We have to be on that plane." "No," Aris said, her voice projecting so everyone in the queue could hear. "Mr. Cole wishes to exercise his authority. Let him. He says he can sell our seats. Let us see him try." Aris turned to Braden. "Go ahead. Cancel the tickets. Cancel the Aurora travel group." Braden hesitated. The confidence in her eyes was unsettling. But he was on a stage now. He couldn't back down in front of his staff. "Fine," Braden snapped. He turned to the keyboard. "Watch me." He typed in the group code. The list of 30 names appeared. 30 full-fare first-class tickets. A combined revenue of nearly $400,000 for a single flight, not counting the corporate contract value. Braden's finger hovered over the Cancel PNR button. "Last chance to apologize to my agent and get in line like everyone else," Braden warned. "Delete it," Aris challenged. Braden pressed the button. "Are you sure?" the screen asked. "Yes. Enter manager override code." Braden typed his code. Confirmed. PNR deleted. Seats released to inventory. "Done," Braden said, turning back with a smug grin. "You're off the flight. All of you. Now get out of my terminal before I have you arrested for trespassing." Jessica let out a small, relieved breath. She had won. They were gone. Aris didn't move. She didn't panic. She slowly reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out her phone again. But this time, she didn't call the CEO. She opened an app, a banking app. "Sarah," Aris said calmly, "call legal. Initiate protocol severance." Sarah nodded, pulling out her own phone. "On it." "What are you doing?" Braden asked, his smile faltering. "You just cancelled the tickets of the negotiating team for the Vanguard Regal merger," Aris explained, her voice devoid of emotion. "Which means the merger is technically void as of this moment. But more importantly, Mr. Cole, you didn't just cancel tickets." Aris held up her phone screen. It showed a stock ticker. Regal Airways, RGL. "You see," Aris continued, stepping closer to the counter, "my company, Vanguard, owns the fuel supplier that services this airport. We also own the catering company that loads your planes, and we hold the lease on the hangars your aircraft sleep in tonight." Braden's face went ash white. "Sarah," Aris called out. "What is the status?" Sarah held her phone to her ear, speaking to the legal team in London. She covered the microphone. "Legal has executed the clause. The fuel trucks are being recalled. The catering vans are turning around. And the hangar locks are being changed remotely." Aris looked at Braden. "You wanted to flex your power, Mr. Cole. You have none. You are a tenant in my house, and I just turned off the lights." The impact was immediate. Within 3 minutes of Braden deleting the tickets, the phone at the check-in desk began to ring. Then the radio on Braden's belt chirped. Then the overhead PA system crackled. "Duty manager to the ramp. We have a situation with the fuelers. They just unhooked the hose and drove off. Flight 492 is only 20% fueled." Braden grabbed his radio, his hands shaking. "What? Tell them to come back." "They said they have a stop work order from corporate boss. They said the contract is suspended." Another voice cut in on the radio. "Dispatch here. Catering just pulled away. They took the carts with them. No food on board." The passengers in the terminal were beginning to murmur. The architect, Mr. Henderson, who had been so rude earlier, stormed up to the counter. "What is going on?" Henderson demanded. My app says the flight is delayed. I have to be in London. We're handling it, Braden stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. He looked at Aris. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Aris said innocently. You cancelled the contract. When you removed the Aurora Group, you signalled that Regal Airways no longer wishes to do business with Vanguard. Our systems are automated. No passengers, no partnership, no fuel. Jessica Vance was staring at the screen. Braden, she whispered, look at the stock. Braden looked at the monitor, where a news ticker ran at the bottom. Breaking news. Vanguard Horizon pulls out of Regal Airways talks. Regal stock plummets, 12% in after-hours trading. You crashed the stock, Braden gasped. In 5 minutes. The market reacts to instability, Aris said. And you, Mr. Cole, are very unstable. The crowd was turning. Initially, they had been annoyed by Aris holding up the line. Now, realizing that this hoodie woman held the fate of their flight in her hands, they turned their anger toward the airline staff. Fix this, a woman in the back yelled. Get them on the plane, shouted another. Mr. Henderson, realizing he had bet on the wrong horse, tried to pivot. He turned to Braden. You idiot! Do you know who she is? Just put them back on the manifest. I can't, Braden yelled, losing his composure. I released the seats. The system automatically sold them to the standby list. The cabin is full. It was true. The moment the seats were released, the automated system had upgraded 30 lucky passengers from economy and cleared the standby queue. The seats were gone. Aris watched this chaos with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a lab rat. Well, she said, that is unfortunate. It seems you cannot fly us. And if you cannot fly us, we cannot sign the merger. And if we cannot sign the merger, Regal Airways will be bankrupt by Monday. Please, Braden begged, his arrogance completely evaporated. He looked like a child. Please, Dr. Thorne. I didn't know. Jessica told me. Jessica lied, Aris said simply. And you didn't check. You saw a black woman and assumed she was the problem. You saw a white man in a suit, she gestured to Henderson, and assumed he was right. That is not a mistake, Mr. Cole. That is a worldview. And it just cost your airline $1 billion. Just then, a commotion erupted at the security checkpoint. Running, actually sprinting, through the terminal was a man in a disheveled tuxedo. He was red-faced, panting, and holding a phone. Behind him trailed 3 terrified assistants. It was Richard Sterling, the CEO. He had been at a gala in downtown Chicago when he got the call. He hadn't even had time to change. Stop! Richard screamed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Nobody move! He skidded to a halt at the counter, nearly knocking over a stanchion. He looked at the chaos, the angry mob of passengers, the confused police, the terrified Braden and Jessica, and finally, the calm, immovable force that was Aris Thorne and her army of 30 executives. Richard looked at the screen. He saw the cancelled tickets. He saw the fuel stopped alert. He turned to Braden. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Did you? Richard wheezed, trying to catch his breath. Did you cancel the Vanguard PNR? Braden couldn't speak. He just nodded. Richard turned to Jessica. And you're still here? I told you to leave. Jessica trembled. Richard straightened his tie, though it was hopelessly crooked. He turned to Aris and fell to his knees. Literally. The CEO of a major airline dropped to his knees on the dirty airport carpet in front of a woman in a hoodie. Aris, Richard pleaded. Dr. Thorne, please, I beg you, reinstate the fuel. I will fix this. I will give you my personal jet. I will fly the plane myself, if I have to. Aris looked down at him. Stand up, Richard. You are embarrassing yourself. Richard scrambled up. I'll fire them. I'll fire everyone. Just tell me what to do." "I do not want your jet," Aris said. "We have business to conduct on the flight. We need the first-class cabin of Flight 492. That is the agreement." "But the seats are sold," Braden blurted out. "The system gave them away." Richard spun on Braden. "Then unsell them. Kick everyone else off. I don't care if it's the Pope. Clear that cabin." "You want me to deboard 30 paying passengers?" Braden asked, horrified. "That's illegal. The DOT regulations." "I don't care about the DOT," Richard roared. "I care about the bank foreclosing on my house. Clear the cabin." The announcement went out over the PA system moments later. "Attention passengers on Flight 492. Due to an operational error, the first-class cabin has been overbooked. We are looking for 30 volunteers to voluntarily downgrade to economy or take a flight tomorrow. Compensation will be provided." Nobody moved. Nobody volunteered. Why would they? They had just snagged free upgrades. Aris watched the stalemate. "It seems you have a dilemma, Richard. Your customers do not want to move, and my team does not want to fly economy." "I'll pay them," Richard said frantically. He grabbed the microphone from the gate desk. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Richard Sterling, CEO of Regal Airways. I am offering $5,000 cash to anyone who gives up their first-class seat right now." A few hands went up, but not enough. "$10,000!" Richard screamed. The crowd gasped. $10,000? Hands started shooting up, but Mr. Henderson, the architect, sat firmly in his seat near the gate. "I'm not moving," he shouted. "I have a contract. I'm a platinum member." He looked at Aris with pure spite. He wanted to win. He wanted to prove that his status meant something. Aris walked over to him. She motioned for Sarah to hand her a file. "Mr. Henderson," Aris said quietly, "you are flying to London to present the Skyline proposal to the Dubai Investment Authority, correct?" "That's confidential," Henderson snapped. "The head of the Investment Authority is on my board," Aris said. "If you do not get out of that seat, I will make a call, and when you arrive in London, there will be no meeting. Just a return ticket home." Henderson's jaw dropped. He looked at her eyes. They were dead serious. "You wouldn't?" "Try me," Aris whispered. Henderson stood up. He grabbed his bag. "I'll take the 10,000, he muttered, defeated. One by one, the cabin was cleared. It was a humiliating spectacle for the airline. Passengers were paid off, shuffled around, and delayed. The flight was already 2 hours late. Richard turned to Braden and Jessica. "Get out of my sight," he hissed. "Security." 2 large guards stepped forward. They grabbed Jessica and Braden by the arms. "Wait!" Jessica screamed as she was dragged away. "It's not fair! She tricked me! She didn't dress like a rich person!" Her screams echoed through the terminal until the doors closed behind her. Aris watched them go. She turned to Richard. "One condition, Richard." "Anything," Richard said, wiping sweat from his brow. "The fuel trucks return," Aris said. "But the price of fuel just went up. 30%. Consider it a nuisance fee." Richard winced. That would cost the airline millions a year. But he had no choice. "Done." "And," Aris added, looking at the gate agents who were scrambling to reprint the boarding passes, "my team boards first. Alone." "Of course," Richard said. Aris nodded to her team. The Aurora group picked up their briefcases. They didn't cheer, they didn't high-five. They just adjusted their suits and walked toward the jet bridge. But the story wasn't over, because while the battle of the terminal was won, the flight itself would reveal one final twist, a secret that Jessica Vance had left behind in the computer system before she was dragged away. A digital time bomb waiting to explode over the Atlantic. The cabin of Flight 492 was a sanctuary of hushed luxury. With the general public cleared out, the Aurora travel group had turned the upper deck into a flying war room. Laptops were open, blueprints for the merger were spread across tray tables, and the champagne, poured by nervous flight attendants who knew exactly who was on board, remained largely untouched. Dr. Aris Thorne sat in seat 1A. She had finally swapped her hoodie for a silk blouse provided by her assistant, but she kept the sneakers on. She was reviewing the fuel logistics contract, calculating the 30% penalty she had just levied on Regal Airways. "Richard is going to weep when he sees these figures," Sarah Jenkins murmured from seat 1B. "Richard learned a cheap lesson," Aris replied, not looking up. "He lost money. He could have lost his company. Dignity is expensive, Sarah." The mood was triumphant, but calm. They were 3 hours into the 7-hour flight to London. The Atlantic Ocean was a pitch-black void, 35,000 feet below them. Suddenly, the fasten seatbelt sign chimed. But there was no turbulence. The cockpit door opened. Captain Miller, no relation to the officer in Chicago, stepped out. He was a veteran pilot with grey temples and a face that usually projected absolute calm. Right now, however, he looked pale. He wasn't looking at the passengers. He was looking at Oris. He walked straight to seat 1A, ignoring the other executives. "Dr. Thorne," the captain said, his voice tight, "I need you to come to the galley. Now." "Is there a problem, Captain?" Aris asked, sensing the shift in the air. The other executive stopped typing. The silence in the cabin became heavy. "Now, Mum. Please." Aris unbuckled and followed him to the front galley, behind the heavy curtain. Richard Sterling, who had taken a jump seat in the cockpit to stay out of the way, was standing there, looking like he was about to vomit. "What is it?" Aris asked. "We just received a message from ACARS, Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System," the captain said. "It came from the Department of Homeland Security, via the O'Hare dispatch. And? The message says there is a Category Red passenger on board," the captain said, his hand resting instinctively near the crash axe stored on the wall. "It says that a passenger boarded using a stolen diplomatic identity and is flagged for immediate detention. The name on the alert is yours, Dr. Thorne." Aris stared at him. "That is absurd." "Is it?" The captain held up a printout from the cockpit printer. "The system says your passport was flagged as stolen lost 30 minutes after we took off. The protocol for a Category Red is to divert the aircraft to the nearest secure airfield, in this case Gander, Newfoundland, and wait for tactical teams to board." Richard Sterling stepped forward. "Captain, I told you, I know her. This is my merger partner." "And I told you, Mr. Sterling," the captain snapped, "that if I ignore a DHS red notice and land in London, I lose my license. I go to prison. The plane gets impounded. This is a federal security alert." Iris closed her eyes. She saw the face of Jessica Vance, the tears, the spite, the way she had hammered on the keyboard right before she was dragged away. Systems locked, she had lied. She wasn't just stalling. She was entering a code. "It was the agent," Iris said, opening her eyes. Jessica Vance. She still had her login credentials active for a few minutes before security removed her. She accessed the APIS, Advanced Passenger Information System, and manually flagged my passport as stolen. "That's a nice theory," the captain said. "But I can't fly a plane on theories. Unless you can prove it's a false flag in the next 10 minutes, I'm turning this bird around. We are going to Newfoundland." The hum of the engines seemed to grow louder. If they diverted, the merger signing would be missed, the stock would crash, the deal would die, and Oris would be handcuffed on a tarmac in Canada, stripped of her dignity in front of the world press. Jessica Vance's revenge from the grave of her career. "I can prove it," Aris said, But I need Wi-Fi. And I need Kenji. Wi-Fi is restricted during security alerts, the captain said. Turn it on, Richard ordered. That's an order, Captain. The captain hesitated, then nodded to the lead flight attendant. Enable the sat link. Aris poked her head out of the curtain. Kenji, bring your laptop and the satellite decryptor. Kenji Sato was out of his seat in a second. He squeezed into the small galley, opening his ruggedized laptop. What do we need? Kenji asked. Access the airline's internal log for O'Hare Terminal 3, Station 4, Aris commanded. I want the keystroke history for user ID, J. Vance between 8:20 p.m. and 8:35 p.m. That's a closed server, Kenji said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. I'll have to backdoor it through the in-flight entertainment maintenance port. Do it, Aris said. The captain watched the clock. You have 5 minutes before I start the descent, Kenji typed. Strings of code reflected in his glasses. I'm in the subsystem, bypassing the firewall. Okay, I see the terminal logs. Filtering by user. A bead of sweat rolled down Richard Sterling's nose. Got it, Kenji said. Here. At 8:32 p.m., user J. Vance accessed the DHS portal link. She entered a manual override code, stolen 77. She flagged the passport after the ticket was printed. Print it, Aris said. Kenji hit a key. The galley printer whirred. Aris snatched the paper and handed it to the captain. Look at the timestamp, Aris said. 8:32 p.m. That was 10 minutes after Richard called to fire her. She used her terminal one last time to sabotage the flight. It is a malicious entry, Captain. A federal crime. The captain studied the paper. He looked at the timestamp, then at his watch. He looked at Richard Sterling, the CEO, who was nodding frantically. If I'm wrong, the captain said slowly, SWAT teams will be waiting for us at Heathrow. If you divert, Aris countered, you destroy your airline for a lie told by a racist ticket agent. The captain took a deep breath. He crumpled the paper and tossed it into the trash bin. To hell with it, the captain said. I'll radio London. We're continuing to Heathrow. Richard let out a breath that sounded like a sob. Aris just smoothed her silk blouse. One more thing, Kenji, Aris said, her eyes cold. Yes, boss. Send that log file to the FBI field office in Chicago and to the FAA. Mark it urgent. Cyber terrorism involving commercial aviation. Kenji grinned. Sending now. The landing at Heathrow was smooth, the wheels kissing the runway, just as the sun began to rise over London. The grey mist of the morning felt welcoming to Aris. She was home. But the drama wasn't quite over. As the plane taxied to the gate, flashing blue lights reflected off the fuselage. Several police cars and a black government van were waiting on the tarmac. Richard Sterling looked out the window, terrified. They didn't believe us. They sent the police. They are not here for me, Richard, Aris said, unbuckling her seatbelt. They are here for the report. When the doors opened, Aris didn't walk out in handcuffs. She walked out to a salute. A senior inspector from Scotland Yard was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. Dr. Thorne, the inspector said. We received the data packet from your team mid-flight. The FBI in Chicago has verified the timestamp. The flag on your passport has been scrubbed. Thank you, Inspector, Aris said. And the perpetrators? That, the inspector smiled grimly, is being handled as we speak. Chicago is 6 hours behind us. It's just past 2 a.m. there. Chicago, 2 a.m. Jessica Vance and Braden Cole were sitting in a dive bar called The Tailspin, located 3 miles from O'Hare. They were drunk. They were celebrating. Did you see her face? Jessica laughed, slurring her words, slamming a shot glass onto the sticky table. She thought she won. She thought she was so special with her private jet friends. You're a genius, Jess, Braden toasted, his tie undone. Flagging the passport. Legendary. That plane is probably freezing its landing gear off in Newfoundland right now. She's getting strip-searched by Mounties." "That's what she gets," Jessica sneered, "coming into my priority lane, speaking like she owns the place. Who does she think she is?" Suddenly, the music in the bar cut out. The lights slammed on, blindingly bright. "Health inspector!" the bartender shouted, confused. But it wasn't the health inspector. The front door was kicked open. "Federal agents, nobody move!" 12 agents in FBI windbreakers swarmed the bar. They didn't check IDs. They went straight to the booth in the back. Jessica screamed as a flashlight was shone in her face. Braden tried to slide under the table. "Jessica Vance! Braden Cole!" the lead agent barked. "Hands where I can see them." "We didn't do anything," Braden squealed as he was hauled up by his collar. "You are under arrest for violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 32, the agent recited, spinning Jessica around and slamming the cuffs on her wrists tight. "Destruction of aircraft and aircraft facilities, and interference with flight crew members and attendants, also falsifying federal records." "It was a prank!" Jessica cried, the alcohol instantly evaporating from her system. "I just put a note in the computer. It was a joke." "You falsely flagged a commercial flight as carrying a terrorist," the agent said, leaning into her ear. "That's not a prank, honey. That's a felony with a mandatory minimum of 20 years. 20 years? Jessica's legs gave out. She had to be held up by the agents. "Dr. Aris Thorne sends her regards," the agent whispered as he dragged her out into the cold Chicago night. London. The boardroom. 3 hours later, inside the glass-walled headquarters of Vanguard Horizon. The merger documents sat on the mahogany table. Richard Sterling looked like he had aged 10 years in one night. He sat opposite Aris. "The papers are ready, Aris," Richard said quietly. "The original deal. 50-50 partnership. I just want to sign and go to sleep." Aris picked up the pen. She looked at the contract. Then she looked at Sarah Jenkins. "Sarah, shred this," Aris said. "What?" Richard stood up. "Aris, please, you promised." "I promised to save your airline, Richard," Aris said. "I did not promise to be your partner." She slid a new folder across the table. "This is a buyout offer," Aris said. "Vanguard Horizon will acquire 100% of Regal Airways. You will step down as CEO. You will receive a generous severance package, enough to retire comfortably. But you will have no operational control." "You're taking my company," Richard gasped. "Your company is broken, Richard," Aris said softly. "It is infected with a culture that allows people like Jessica Vance and Braden Cole to thrive. It allows paying customers to be ridiculed. It judges people by their accents and their clothes rather than their character." Aris stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the London skyline. "I cannot merge with that culture," she said. "I must replace it. I am going to rebuild Regal Airways. It will be a company where a grandmother in a hoodie is treated with the same respect as a king in a suit, where diversity is an asset, not a target." She turned back to him. "Sign the buyout, Richard, or go bankrupt on Monday." Richard looked at the contract. He looked at the news on his phone. Headlines were already breaking about the arrest of 2 Regal employees for cyber-terrorism. The stock was in freefall. He had no leverage. He picked up the pen. His hand shook, but he signed. "Done," he whispered. "Good," Aris said. She pressed the intercom button. "Sarah, tell the pilot to ready the jet. We are going back to Chicago." "Chicago?" Richard asked, bewildered. "Why?" "Because," Aris smiled, pulling her charcoal hoodie back on over her silk blouse. "I have a flight to catch, and this time I'm going to make sure the check-in process is up to my standards." She walked out of the boardroom, her sneakers squeaking softly on the polished floor. She was Dr. Aris Thorne. She was a billionaire, a visionary, and the new owner of the skies. And she had taught the world a valuable lesson. Never judge a book by its cover, and never, ever mock the accent of the woman who owns the plane. Iris Thorne didn't just win a business deal, she dismantled a system of prejudice that had rotted the airline from the inside out. Jessica Vance and Braden Cole learned too late that their small-minded bigotry had life-altering consequences, trading their power trips for prison cells. Iris proved that true power doesn't need to shout, it just needs to act. In a world obsessed with appearances, the woman in the hoodie was the most powerful person in the room. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that respect costs nothing, but disrespect can cost you everything. Thanks for watching.